let's welcome everyone back to this second episode of Generational Curse Words. We're really excited about this podcast and where it's going to go. So we want to
Mhm.
welcome everyone. If this is your first time coming in, I'm Mustafaa Madian, and I'm here with Olivia Harp, and we
Hello,
are
hello, everyone.
your hosts for Generational Curse Words. In our first episode, we kind of talked about who we are, but we are, our question to everyone is always, if generational curse words were a solution, what would we be? And the answer, of course, is we are an asset-based approach. So
Mhm,
our approach to um, our conversations, our movement, and our purpose is to be based on positive and strength-based solutions to the situations, the scenarios that confronts us in life. And of course, we base everything on youth development and focusing on our young people, because unless we do that, we know that we cannot, you know, not only affect positive change in the world, but we can't even continue and perpetuate ourselves as a
mhm.
species if we don't focus on the positive development of our young people.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, well, first of all, Mustafa, how are you doing? It's been a week.
Um,
Life has happened. How's
I'm
life
good.
been?
Well, yeah, yeah. Well, I'm still waiting for things to kind of pop up um, on the mission and work of Department of Juvenile Services in
Mhm,
Maryland, on part of that movement as they try to reform the juvenile justice system in Maryland to positively affect young people. That's one entity I think that's kind of worth a shout out in terms of their effort on
mhm,
trying to use a youth development approach when it comes to young people who get in trouble, who get into the system, and instead of using a punitive approach, to actually using a developmental approach, not only for those young people, but for those environments that they're in, so that they return to wholesome environments, while at the same time those environments uh, continue to evolve into something that's safe and productive for young people.
mhm.
So I was doing that. This has been quite a week. I'm going to ask you how you are, Olivia.
No,
How
I'm
things are
all
going with
ears
you?
right now, though. This is our
uh,
typical check-in. This is our typical Zoom meeting.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But what's going on in the world always affects me
Mhm,
on a very, very deep level, and looking at what's so part of what I did this week is I did some background research on Israel, on Palestine, on Gaza, on all of
mhm,
that, and also looking at different social media sites like LinkedIn, where again, it's really interesting to me how when things happen in the world that get spotlighted, so to speak, and then how people who otherwise would never even join in the conversation now take a position. So we got
mhm,
this whole thing about we're behind Israel, we support Israel, and no one wants to have a conversation about, well, why did it happen? What's in the background? Why does Hamas exist? Why um, does Hezbollah exist? What has happened and what has happened
mhm,
just in the world in general. So, a simple thing that I did, because if you try to look up the history, and it's interesting, Olivia, because when you look up the history of Israel, you'll get two versions. It'll actually literally say the pro-Israeli uh,
Isn't that the case with
history.
everything
Yeah,
that you look up?
if you look up the history of America, you can actually go find one
Mhm.
history.
Okay,
That
okay.
when I looked up this, it actually, everywhere I looked, it actually would have, okay, Israel's version of the history, Palestine's version of the
Yeah,
history, all
okay.
in one document. So, and that's interesting because what it's really saying is that no one. I mean, it's really contested. It's really contested as to what's what. So you have to kind of look up the history of the world
Mhm,
and who these people are to kind of get that. But what was really interesting to me was to look at the map of Israel slash Palestine or Palestine slash Israel um, back in 1946, and then look at it today, and to actually see Palestine slowly dissolve into, I mean, practically nothing. Um,
Mhm.
it's really interesting, and there's a and even if people were to say, well, it wasn't officially, because the argument was it was never officially Palestine. It was never, the rest of the world didn't recognize it, and then of course that goes into that Eurocentric, white centric thing that we get to name the world and decide what's what, and where's where, and not the people who actually live there themselves. But the point is that not only has the landmass diminished, Olivia, but the people have
Mhm.
actually diminished, the people themselves.
It's a
Um,
genocide,
it
yeah.
really is a genocide, the people themselves. Um, and and so when you sift through that and you see that, and then you actually see again the collusion and the intentionality of other countries like America and their involvement in that, it really gets interesting. It really
Mhm.
gets interesting. But um it's sad. And the thing that's sad to me is when people can really just step back and say, okay, there's something wrong um, with this. There's something wrong, you know, um,
Mhm.
and it's really interesting. So I kind of feel that, and I've have been feeling that this week. But I'll tell you what I have been able to do that I normally did not do. I have been able to push back, meaning I'll turn it on, I'll watch it. Okay, 3 minutes, that's it, I'm done.
Mhm.
Flip the channel. Whereas with the all of our previous types of things, like when COVID was happening, when 9/11 was happening, I mean, it would stay on the channel, it would stay on the news, 24 hours a day, in and out of the room or whatever. And nothing's really happening. Nothing's changing. We know what's going to happen. We're waiting for
Yeah.
Israel to do whatever it is they're going to do, and then even then it won't be news because we know what the result of that is going to be. So it's it's unfortunate, and what's unfortunate is what's been happening in this country. You heard about the 6-year-old kid, right?
I try not to watch the news. I know
Yeah.
that sounds
Okay.
so
Okay.
ignorant, but it's
Okay.
just
No, there's
it's
some.
so much.
I'll just say this, but there's some things that have been even happening in this country, where I mean, people have just totally lost their mind. And I
Mhm.
think again, when we talk about pride, you know, if that's our word, that's our curse word today. What pride makes you do, and how far do you take that, and you know, uh,
Mhm.
what does that mean? What are the limits to that, and how you define yourself by that?
Mhm.
How much of that is you? How much of that is your ego? And how it impacts what you do, and the price,
Yeah.
that you're willing to pay, you
I mean,
know.
I will I because even when you said when you look up the history, there's 2 separate histories. I would dare to say, as I'm holding They Came Before Columbus, that
Uh-huh.
even America has 2 different has 2 different
Yeah,
multiple
yeah,
different stories,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Talking about the African presence in ancient America,
Mm.
and, how even the Native Americans told Columbus and his men, and even a few men before Columbus, of the Black people of the sun that are in South America that have all the gold, because that's what he was after, right?
Wow, yeah.
To the point that this the existence of Africans in America were so real that Columbus even lied and acted as if America stopped before it actually did. It only went but so
Yeah.
far. It's only but so big. Um, and of course, the people of Spain knew he was lying after a while,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
um, I mean, still didn't acquire as much of America as they would have liked to. But
Yeah,
um, yeah, all that to say, I think there's two stories
yeah, yeah, yeah,
to every history,
yeah.
if not more.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and I was gonna say, and it's really interesting how, because when I'm thinking about when I'm talking in school or when I'm teaching, and I'm talking about Africans, coming to this continent, long before the European did. And when I look at the faces of young people, just for them to be able to conceive of that, because still somewhere
Mm-hmm.
they would, well, how did they get here? Well, they knew how to navigate the water and the oceans and the seas.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like we still um, cannot connect
Mm-hmm.
the dots in terms of that. We talk about that great civilizations of Africa, the advanced sciences and everything, but it's all somewhere it still like just doesn't kind of
Mm-hmm.
connect. Even when we have examples, or we say something like, "Oh, they came before Columbus."
Yeah.
Well, how could they come? Well, they were doing brain surgery back. How could they do brain surgery? How could they, to believe that there was an advanced civilization
Mm-hmm.
that no longer exists is the first thing. To be able to understand and accept that, then we can connect all of those other dots.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's always two stories, and it's just a matter of um, perspective,
Yeah.
and for us understanding when we are operating on our own perspective or someone else's perspective.
Absolutely, because that's the thing. That's the thing. Choice is an illusion because the
Hmm.
possibilities are endless. When you say choice, people instantly think that they are limited to a few options.
Right,
When you
right.
say choice, the connotation isn't, I could choose from 1,000 different paths.
Exactly.
Like that's
Exactly.
just not what people think. So the illusion of choice has people thinking that because they chose between two different things or three different things that they chose, that this is
Hmm.
what I believe in,
Right,
when in
right,
actuality there's just I mean, the human mind is so intricate and complex and creative. It makes no sense why
right, right,
these are the only three options,
right,
why these are the only two political parties,
right. Exactly.
why these are the only religions, or even why these are the only stories in history.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Um, had some Jehovah Witnesses come to the door a couple of days ago. That's always fun. Um, that's
It
all.
it actually is. It actually. I'm not even trying to. I learn a lot. I
Yeah,
learn a
yeah,
lot.
yeah. That's always fun.
Hmm.
But first we start. I let the guy talk for at least maybe about 2 minutes before I said, "Well, first let me start by saying that I come to the door and I open the door and you just point to a scripture and you start talking. You don't say, 'Hi, sir. How are you doing? Do you have a few moments?' I mean, you just get right into it." I said, but and I think he was talking about, well, do you think that's what he started out by saying? Do you think that the world is in a terrible state today? That's how he started off. And I just
Hmm.
remember that from years ago because that's how they used to always start off.
That's
Um,
how they started off at our door over the summer.
yeah, yeah.
The
Do you think the
same.
world is in, yeah, the terrible state? So they want to take you there, and then and then he wants to point out the scripture. I said, well, I said, let me just stop you there for a moment. I said, because the scripture that you're using, I said, uh, when we do our research, we have to think about where did that come from? Where does this come from? And we got to a certain point in the conversation where uh, the point we got to the conversations where he was basically touting who is God, what's the proper name of God, the creator or whatever.
Hmm.
And I was saying how, well, when it comes to names, it really doesn't matter, or that we can't say that there's one name more proper or than the other. And I said, well, you can believe what you want. I said, but here's my thing. I said, I believe that wherever people were on the planet Earth, they were not without spiritual guidance at any point in history. I said, so that being said, I said, to be able to say that, or to suggest that there's one faith or one place in the planet where the creator, um, decided, this is where the religion's going to be, and everybody else on the planet is just kind of left without any kind of guidance. Because that's when I was coming up. I would always say, ask my mom. I say, okay, well, so if this is happening over in Israel, Bethlehem, wherever, what's happening in the rest of the world? What are other people believing? What are they thinking? What are they? And of course, the way our history is taught and the way we're taught, even in terms of uh, in religion, we're taught as if wherever that story is happening, that's the center of the world and the universe, and nothing else is going on anywhere else in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, except when people journey out and find these people, and of course, these people are always without any sense of spirituality, or they're worshiping idols, or um, and so we got to a point in our conversation where we basically had to part because it was no longer making sense to him, even though he tried. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mustafaa, why'd you do that? Why
huh?
did you do? Why
I
did you
don't
do
know.
that?
I don't know. I don't know.
I
But
don't know. I don't talk to. If you knock on my door, chances are I'm not talking to you. I don't care if you are selling
mhm.
electricity or
Yeah,
religion,
yeah.
anything. I
Well,
don't know.
and maybe it has to do with pride. Maybe it has to do with, but I don't know. But I think
Mm-hmm.
it's because I think it was because he did not respectfully um interrupt me
Mm-hmm.
or ask for my time.
You want to know
He
something?
you know
Like, as I incorrectly interrupt you. Sorry.
no.
But so there is a scholar. His name is Robert Ferris Thompson.
Mhm.
He wrote a book called African Art in Motion,
Mhm.
where he talked about the 10 canons of African art. And
Mhm.
these are just 10 things that African artists, creators, whatever, because it could be for dance, it could be for a jazz composition, for any form of artistic expression that African um, artists employ throughout their works.
Mhm.
And one is correct entrance and exit. And
Uh-huh.
as I was reading the canons, I'm like, this is Black culture, period.
Period. Yeah.
You like,
Yeah.
let's say it's the
Yeah.
70s, we're at the disco.
Yep.
You have to ease your way onto the
Yeah.
dance floor.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't just run up in there.
Right.
When
Yep.
you leave, you ease your way
Your way
out.
out. Yep.
So
Yep.
it's and these are all canons that are used as a sign of respect for the art form or the ability
Mhm.
to create
Mhm.
art.
Mhm.
But I think as Black people, correct entrance and exit is very,
Yep.
very important. I can't tell
Yep.
you how many times I've seen an argument break out because you're not listening to me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
forget the
Yeah.
content,
Yep.
forget what we're even discussing. Let
Yep.
me speak. Let me
Yep.
speak. Yeah.
Yep.
So I get it. It disturbed your African soul.
Yeah. Yeah. It did. It did. And when I mentioned that to him, he continued as if I didn't say anything. He continued as
Mhm.
if I didn't say anything. And to make matters worse, this guy was an elder. So he was
Mhm.
even more elder, and of course, he had his student. I call him apprentice because they go with their apprentices, and they're supposed to be teaching them the ropes, right? And his apprentice was over on the side. He was just like side eyeing, like, "Oh my God." Um, but
Mhm.
that's why I kind of just engaged him. It's I think we took all of maybe 10 minutes, and then I just kind of let him go. I said, "Well, this is where we have to part." But and they usually don't come back here for a while. So it's the first time I've seen him in
Mhm.
a couple of years. But I don't know. Yeah, yeah. But that's what it was. It was the fact that he didn't say
Mhm.
hello, how are you, how's your day? He just, let me ask you a question. You're like, as if we were already in the middle of a conversation.
Mhm.
So,
And
but
I
yeah.
will say, because we had a Jehovah's Witness that would frequent our door for maybe a month straight on
Hmm.
Saturdays.
Hmm.
But he employed correct entrance and
Hmm.
correct exit. So
Hmm.
Arthur's, engaging the guy. And then the next Saturday, so when he came that first Saturday, then he saw that Arthur had a son, and so the next Saturday he came, he brought his little boy.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
he brought his little boy, and then that Saturday he saw me, and
Mhm.
so the third time he came, he brought his wife, and
Okay.
so even though there's certain connotations that we have about Jehovah's Witnesses knocking on your door,
Mhm.
Black people got jokes for days about
Yeah.
Jehovah's Witnesses
Yeah.
knocking on the
Yeah.
door.
Yeah.
Um, it in a way, all those connotations went out the window.
Mhm.
Um, and it felt like we were getting to know this cool family at the door.
Right.
Mind
Right.
you, we weren't converting
Right.
because we're not fully sold on the religion that we were raised in.
Right.
So we're not, I'm not signing on to
Mhm.
another Jesus subscription.
Yeah.
But I will
Yeah.
say, um, again, that respect element and just that baseline understanding that we are Black.
Right.
Religion
Right.
aside, we are going to be communal in this
Yeah.
approach.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll bring my
Yeah.
son, I'll bring my wife, I'll make sure that there's another you that you could look across
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
identify on the other side of this doorpost.
And that's
Um,
really ultimately, I think, when we communicate with each other, especially or particularly as a people, that has to always be the baseline, or who
mhm,
are we? Even if we're communicating or we're trying to advance something or sell something to each other, there's always
mhm,
still this basis of who are we? That
yeah,
identity, who are essentially that needs to always be a part of it. Mind you, and I did mention this, but when I was on my journey, I actually at one point, uh, when I was in college, I had a friend who was Jehovah's Witness. I actually did visit Kingdom Hall a couple of times, and I was
mhm,
actually studying and looking into the religion, looking into the Jehovah's Christian Witnesses, which is the whole title. Um, and had the New World Translation and everything, and was studying it. I never mention that when I say I never mention that when I talk to Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't say, well, I used to go attend Kingdom Hall. I used to do that as when I was
mhm,
doing my uh, who is God, where is God, what is it all about. And I'll say this now because it may come up later, but I've actually at one point was studying, of course, Jehovah's Witness. Christianity was the root, of course, of what I grew up in. Islam, Buddhism, Taoism, um, and I mean, at one point, I think it's between the ages of 16 and 18 is when I kind of went on and just, you know, what is it all about? What is life all about? And this kind of examination, and had a lot of different people come into my
mhm,
life to explain, and I would ask questions too. Um, and I'll mention this as well. And what got me to that point was when I was in the fourth grade. I had a teacher. I'll never forget her, Miss Bryce. Um, and what she did really kind of set the pattern for my life. Is she sent a note home to parents for us to go on this field trip. We didn't know where we were going, but we all got permission. We all dressed up. And what she did, Olivia, the field trip was we visited a mosque or masjid. We visited a kingdom hall. We visited a synagogue. We visited the National Shrine and the National Cathedral. And at each of these places that we stopped, and even I think it was Berea Church, Seventh Day Adventist, each of these places we stopped, we met a priest, a rabbi, an imam.
mhm,
And there was three questions that they answered for us. They told us what the religion was about. They told us the basic tenets of the religion, when and how they worshiped, and they uh, taught us, they expressed their holidays. And so that was pivotal. The reason it was pivotal was because when I got to the synagogue and um, well, we were talking to the rabbi or whatever, and we was asking. We said, "Well, we don't worship. We don't worship Jesus." We were asking questions. And he said, "Well, we don't worship Jesus Christ." And I said, "Wow!" And I mean, here I am, 9 years old, and I asked him. I said, "You all don't worship Jesus Christ. That means you all don't celebrate Christmas." He said, "No, we don't celebrate Christmas." And I just said, "Then how do your children get toys?"
Mm.
And he just tilted his head to the side and he just kind of smiled. He said, "Their parents buy them for them." And Olivia, it changed my life. Talk
Mm.
about a paradigm shift.
I know.
What? You mean parents actually buy kids get toys for some reason other than Christmas?
Quick
Of course.
question. That's what I was gonna say. So growing up, you only got toys on Christmas, I
Oh yeah,
presume.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
That's the only time I got toys, if we could afford them then.
Okay.
Otherwise, for 9 years, really, I mean, I believe that, and there were some Jehovah Witnesses in my community that we used to play with every now and then when they were allowed to come outside. But most of the time, what we knew, the rest of the kids knew, they can't come out and play with us because they're Jehovah Witnesses.
Mhm.
But yeah, to that point in my life, I had never received a toy for other than Christmas. So if you can imagine, my whole understanding in terms of my joy and my fun and everything was also tied up to my religion, that believing in Jesus Christ, and that's how you got toys, and that's how you got fun things, and that's how
Mhm.
and even
Oh,
children. And yeah,
wow.
yeah, think about it. My whole thing was
Mhm.
tied up to religion. Um, that's the only time we got toys. The only time we got new clothes was the first day of school. So you don't get new clothes at any other time. So if you wear your shoes out, you just wear them out. You're not getting anything till school starts. So and you're not getting any toys if you get
Mhm.
them, until Christmas. So I guess when we start talking about different other curse words in terms of our relationships with our parents and things like that,
Mhm.
then we'll kind of get a little bit more about what happens there. But yeah, and that's the impact. So very, very early on, um, and the thing that amazed me most about this, I think that the reason it shook me is because this man stood in front of me and he said he did not believe in Jesus Christ. And the thing that amazed me most was that he was not afraid.
Mhm.
That's when I had this whole shift. Here, this man, I was like, in my mind, I'm saying, "You're not afraid of going to hell. You're not afraid." He was not afraid, and he was
Mhm.
happy, and he was happy. And so, at 9 years old, that's where things began. Now, interestingly enough, um, I started reading the Bible from cover to cover when I was 12. I mean, my grandmother used to give me a Bible that, every year for my birthday, and I was reading it. So it didn't shift in terms of my belief at the time, but it shifted that part of me where that fear, that whole thing, that fear of God, was gone. That don't question, that just blindly accept. And I think that's when my mind at 9 years old began to kind of reopen up. It kind of started to close before then. I mean, I can remember the things that I accepted as truth that weren't true, but it made me question things. And
Mhm.
that from that point on, I became like a bone of contention in my mother's. I would ask her different questions about, and she's like, "Boy, why you think that way? Where you get that from?" Well. I said, "Ma," I said, "So you want to serve God for the rest of your life?" She said, "Yes." I said, "You want to be?" I said, "So when you die, you can go up heaven, you can serve Him there." She said, "Yeah." I said, "Mom, why you want? If you're going to serve God now, why you want to serve Him for eternity? You going to be a servant for all of eternity?" You know?
Mhm.
She's like, "Boy, where you get these questions from? What makes you, And it's just certain things that simply didn't make sense to me.
Mhm.
Um, but
I mean,
yeah.
I think I know for me when I started to I guess everyone has that point in time when they start to question
Mm-hmm.
things. Um but basically I think I was how old was I? I don't know. I must have been about 10 though.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm from the South.
Mm-hmm.
My parents' roots are from like the deep, deep South, even
Mhm.
though they both grew up in New York City. My mom's family, um, Black people are funny. If you ask them, they have roots in Bermuda and Britain and Belgium and all that.
Right, right.
When I did our ancestry, they are from Manassas, Virginia. Okay.
Uh,
And the man that they said was a white man, a
mhm.
pickpocketer from Wales. That
Mm.
that's the story, that he was a
Uh-huh.
pickpocketer from Wales and that he moved to Bermuda, and that's where he met the other half of our family.
Okay.
That's not true either, because I don't know why a pickpocketer from Wales's name would be Toussaint Louverture. I think he was
Wow.
from Manassas, Virginia too. Black people are funny. God, I love them,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
don't know
yeah,
who taught y'all our family
yeah,
history. I had to
yeah.
go back and do the genealogy. But all that to say, and even though I can, there's roots in, I have roots in everywhere. I have roots in Bermuda, Nigeria, Guyana,
Mm,
all of that. It's all fine and dandy. Can't tell you
mm,
nothing about it.
mm.
My mind is American South, right?
Right, right.
Like Black people in the South are scary for a reason.
Mhm,
And I
mhm,
get it. I get it because
mhm.
too many horror stories. This is
Yeah,
too many horror stories. Too
yeah.
much spiritual historical residue. Like even on the
Mhm,
85, once I get past Virginia, past like Emporia, start going,
mhm.
especially at night, you can feel the
Yeah,
history.
yeah, yeah.
It's just
Savannah
it's
is that way
thick.
for me. When I'm in
Hmm.
Savannah, I mean, I just feel just spiritually closed in, or like something is like a cloud, or something is, and
I think we talked about this, and I was like, when
yeah.
I go to Savannah, I in the back of my mind, it's like someone just plays strange fruit, and it's just
Mhm,
playing and playing and playing
mhm,
until I
mhm,
leave.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
I felt a similar thing when I was in New Orleans, in certain
Mhm.
areas, especially after Katrina, when I was to Ward 9. It was just like, just you could just feel, you could feel the history, you could feel the oppression,
Mhm.
um you could feel the loss,
Yeah.
the great sense of loss, when I was there. And I
One
haven't
thing
been
about
back
New
in a
Orleans,
while.
though,
Mhm.
you can feel the joy, though,
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
You can
yeah,
feel the joy and the happiness despite everything
yeah.
that has happened. Because New Orleans, I mean, Katrina wasn't the beginning of New Orleans being
Right, right,
neglected. Even
right,
during
right.
COVID, their rates were through the roof. I
Yeah,
remember their rates were
yeah,
through the roof, and no one really, like, that was a
yeah,
statistic that we had to bring to the table. No one brought that to the table. That's something that
yeah.
we had to find out and report to our community.
This, because I was just thinking about holidays, whether we have that in our list of curse words too. The things that the practices and things that we believe and continue to perpetuate,
Mhm.
amongst our kids. S- I was looking at whether we had a black Santa Claus or whatever. Those kind of
Okay.
things. Our images,
Mhm.
those things that we revere and we're taught to worship and we're taught to respect, um uh
Mustafaa, you're
regardless.
not gonna stop until the curse word is pride. So this week's curse
uh
word is
it's
pride. It
it's
took us a while.
pride.
It's
Yeah,
pride. It's
it's
pride.
pride. It is. What is pride, and
Mhm.
it is. It's those things that we muster, to give us a sense of self-worth. And with young people in particular, we can almost, I remember, week before last, I was with a group of young people, and we were asking the question, well, why are young people killing each other?
Mhm.
Why are young people killing each other over a coat, over a pair of shoes, or because somebody stepped on your toes, or somebody disrespected you. And one of the things they said, they said it's our pride. It's a, you don't let
Mhm.
nobody disrespect you. You don't let nobody do this. Or if it's something that somebody has that you want, you take it, because it's an item, that it's something that, that has a value, or they like, or um that they can't get, or it's something expensive. And when you have that, what comes along with that is a sense of respect, or a sense of
Mhm.
pride. And and our young people don't get this out of nowhere, or pull this out of thin air.
Yeah.
Everything that they do and they get, it still comes back to something that, some residue, something that we're passing on to them, either directly or indirectly. Indirectly by not allowing them to have access to it, or directly by how we raise them. Don't let nobody step to you. Don't let nobody disrespect you.
Mhm.
I remember a kid in school. Why did you get my mom? Because my mama said if somebody stepped to me, I'm supposed to slap them. So
Mhm.
how does it help? And how
Yeah.
does all of this hold us back? And
And that makes me, because every curse word that we discuss, we have to figure out what makes it a curse. Because a
yeah.
curse is something that plagues a people or an individual for a
Mhm.
long period
Mhm.
of time. I was about to say a long
Mhm.
periodical time. That's what happens when you are a
Wow.
child of social media.
Yep.
Everything is a Vine, everything is a TikTok, even
Yeah.
being a child of
Yeah.
reality TV,
Yeah.
everything is a Nene Leakes quote. But
Yeah.
pride, it's one of those things that, for instance, your ego is only as powerful or as weak as you allow it to be. And
Yeah.
pride is one of those things that it hijacks the ego,
Mhm.
and you
Mhm.
trade that marriage in for your true identity. And it takes everything in you to separate from that dysfunctional relationship with
Yeah.
pride
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
ego. And I'm thinking of the J. Cole song. It's called Pride is the Devil. Um and the first two lines are pride is the devil. I think it got a hold on me. And as soon as you hear that, anyone listening to that is like, I think so. Like, you
Yep.
automatically see exactly how it has a hold on you. And the chorus, and I hope I'm using, yeah, the chorus, it literally reads, terrified, paranoid. Those are the way that he feels. I'll put you over everything to fill a void. And when
Yep.
you're gone, will I have anything or will I be destroyed?
Uh-huh.
And
Mhm.
that, I'm like, that's what made me think, like, that I was in the car listening to it. And that's when I texted you, was like, should pride be the curse word
Yeah.
this week?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm just like, that sounds like a curse. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is a curse, something that you shake hands with that robs you of everything, starting with your identity.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's us. I
Mhm.
mean, and that is us. That's and it happens.
It makes us do a plethora of
It does.
things. It really
It
does. And it,
does. Yeah.
like, there's no one way that people express their dysfunction with pride.
You're right. Right.
It could be the elder that knocks on people's doors as a
Mhm.
Jehovah's Witness and doesn't let
Mhm.
anyone get a word in.
Mhm.
It could be a child that just won't ever, 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 ever forgive their parents even as they get
Mhm.
older. It could be a parent that just won't ever apologize, or just an abuser that just
Yep.
they can't apologize to you because they can't even apologize to themselves. Like, pride is one of those things that after you get off of the roller coaster, everyone has the same question, which is, what have I done?
Done. Yep. 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 I
Yes.
remember yeah, in the youth development training, one of the first uh trainings that I facilitated, and the question came up, about apologizing, and there was like vigorous debate about this, Olivia. The question was,
Mhm.
when you make a mistake in front of children, do you apologize? And there was a camp which said unconditionally, you do not. You do not
Mhm.
apologize. You never apologize to young people. And as you were saying, that has to do again with this manufactured position that
Mhm.
you have for yourself and your ego. It's pride, and adults should never apologize, should never admit to young people that they are wrong. and
Mhm.
and it and when you ask them why, well, because they'll just use that against you, or that gives them license to go out and just kind of do anything, you know um but yeah, how does it hold us back? Again, because anything that we do, anything that we are, we're the
Mhm.
template, and we're passing that on to young people. And yeah, that's
Mhm.
that's the damning thing. And I think we can't even, as a people, have a conversation because of pride.
Yeah.
We can't even really we can't even really debate it. We can't really. I think when it comes down to it, those places where we have disagreement as a people, I would dare say that that's at the result at the core of it, in terms of a
Mhm.
reason. Like when we talk about reparations, who should get it and who shouldn't get it, um, or what it should be, what it should look like. I think when we talk about, even historically, our elders, our Booker T. Washingtons, and folks who are polarized in different positions on what we should do as a
Mhm.
people. I think, again, pride had a lot to do with it. And then we look at all the systems that we build. I just came back from Ali's step show, and looking at, between fraternities and sororities, mine is better than yours, or again,
Mhm.
that pride. And there are places where we can have wholesome pride. I think we can, you
Absolutely.
know can be proud of who we are, and also allow other people to be proud of who they are. um but
Mhm.
you
I
know
mean, because pride also has a huge pride thrives on acceptance, right?
right, right,
Um the the in order for pride to exist, at least in the context that we're discussing it, there has to be an audience, right? There has to be
exactly,
someone big upping you, because there has to be an achievement that bestows upon you the luxury of being prideful. And even when I think about words, because we always say, and this is important, but words mean things. That's why,
hmm
even in our youth development training, we make sure that we talk about punishment, consequences, and
and
discipline
discipline,
as three different things, or else people will be spanking their kids and calling it discipline, right?
right, right,
But words mean things. So even when I think about pride, I think of a pride of lions. They're not
yeah,
standing
right,
alone.
right,
Right,
right.
like, they're not standing alone, and people say pride goeth before the
The
fall.
fall,
I
right,
think you have to fall and
right,
stand alone, be in the dark alone, trust the process alone. Yes, you can have support, but you're in this alone,
alone, yeah,
um, in
yeah,
order to really tap into your true potential. And so when I
yeah,
think of pride, I think of a pack. I think of, I'm this, I'm that, but you're not standing alone. So is it I,
right,
or is
right,
it
right.
y'all?
Because there is no pride, unless, like you said, unless you have an audience,
Mhm.
unless there is someone else around, unless there's something else there that validates,
Yeah.
who you are. Otherwise, it's just um and it's always comparative.
Yeah.
When you're proud, as compared to what you're proud of, what as compared to, because the flip side of that is shame, right? Would be shame.
Mhm.
So um So if you've got this pride in, who you are, what you do, where you come from, where there's always other elements uh that are connected to that or
Mhm.
help define what that is,
And that's why
Um
shame is useless because
right.
it is making someone feel bad for not living up to a manufactured um accomplishment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we've used that word twice when talking about pride, manufactured. And I don't know the answer to this, but when we talk
Mhm.
about pride being manufactured or just the decorations of pride being manufactured, what's the factory? Like what factory manufactures this? What metaphorical factory
Yeah.
manufactures this? Like
Yeah.
who decides what we can be proud of?
Yeah. 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 Who sets those standards?
Mhm.
And you know why that's important too? Because I mean, think about awards, the system of awarding. Not just certification, but awards. I'm thinking about Academy Awards. I'm thinking about every field that sets up a whole system
Mhm.
of awards. And who set those standards? Who decides um, that they have reached a level for which they should be proud? And 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 then what happens after you reach that? I'll never forget the young lady who was in this theater program that was in. Her whole goal was to get very good at her craft, at dancing and acting, and ultimately to be on Broadway.
Mhm.
Well, she ended up being on Broadway and having a significant role in doing all of this, before she was 20. And so, she didn't expect that because it was like a goal, one of those things, what I want in
Yeah.
life, right? So you do that at 20 and afterwards, and she actually came to me. She said, "Okay, Baba, I don't know what to do now." I said, "What do you mean?" That was my one goal in life, and I've done it.
Mhm.
I had no expectation that was going to happen right away. So I've achieved that. And of course, for anyone who's an actor at that time, to be on Broadway, to be in a Broadway show is like one of the pinnacles of what you consider success.
Mhm.
Um, and of course, it's redefined now because even Broadway isn't what it used to be. But the fact that you can do it once, now do it twice or three times, or whatever, and it's an ongoing thing. But just in terms of her world and how she um, was taught or was made to believe that this is the goal. As an actor, you
Mhm.
get an Academy Award, you get the Grammy, you got the Grammy. Okay, so now what's next? And
Mhm.
even if you're proud, you got 3 or 4 or 5 Grammys or Tonys or Oscars or whatever. Um, what's next, or does that sustain you?
Mhm.
Do you continue to boast about? How about when people are
I
proud of something and they continue
know.
to boast on the same thing forever and ever and ever?
Mhm.
You know,
And
um,
here's the thing, right? And this is two things. Because with young people, now we're talking about the way back, right?
mhm,
We
mhm,
have admitted it.
mhm,
We have admitted it,
mhm,
I think, in the way that we have talked about it. We have apologized for putting this
mhm,
pressure on
mhm,
them. And now
mhm,
how do we fix it? And I
mhm.
think that it's important for young people to understand that there is no benchmark already placed.
Right,
Whether
right,
it's the Olympics, whether it's academics, whether it's entrepreneurship, there is no goal that we have set for you that is um that aligns with who you really are. If
exactly,
that makes any sense.
exactly, absolutely,
You are meant to do bigger and greater than anything. So for us to tell you to um, graduate from high school, don't get pregnant or get anyone else pregnant, get into a college or university, and make good grades, that's a low
yeah,
baseline.
yeah,
But yet those are the things that we
right,
have convinced them will make us proud, so to
exactly,
speak. And so
exactly,
That's one
exactly.
thing. But then when you were talking about the dancer who wanted to perfect her craft, I thought about destination happiness. And
Yeah,
destination happiness is the idea that you won't be happy until you get to a certain point.
right,
But that ends up being a tricky scenario whether you have accomplished something positive or negative.
right,
So let's say, like,
exactly,
so for instance, she accomplished something positive. She
right,
went, she made it to Broadway by the age of 20, right?
right,
And she was so focused and fixated on the goal that she probably didn't enjoy the journey,
right,
right?
right.
She probably didn't enjoy watching her progression. And then because of my studies and my backgrounds, I'm always going to jump into the black male psyche.
Mhm.
Cause pride will have you thinking, okay, I'm gonna be the man when I get 20 bitches under my belt,
Yep,
right?
yep, yep,
What happens when you get to 20? Well,
right.
now you're addicted, and now you get into the things that you whether you know it or not, you get good at whatever you practice. So the
Mhm.
only thing that you are
You're
good at
good
is
at, yep,
seducing women. One of these days you're gonna come across one, and because you are still a man, you're gonna know
right,
that this is your wife. But you're not
right,
gonna know how to do anything but seduce her. And now
right,
you have to provide. Now you have these kids. You don't know how to parent. You don't know how to go out into this world and do anything other than seduce women. So you're
right,
not building businesses. You don't have the career that you want. You aren't well traveled like you want. Like you had no, this is the thing that you are good at. And
right.
so you
And
have,
you raise sons that can't do anything but seduce women.
child. It's just,
Talk about
it's just
generational curses, right?
exact generational curses. And
Mhm,
so that's
mhm.
my whole thing. Pride will have you in a one track mind as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
Pride is so limiting. So when you
yeah,
have destination happiness, there's only one road to that
yeah.
destination because
Absolutely,
the destination
absolutely.
is so short sighted. You don't know
Yeah,
it, but it's so short
yeah,
sighted.
yeah,
Um, and so that's just what I think about is just that
yeah.
this is my one goal, my one goal, my one goal. It's the
Mhm,
one
mhm,
thing that I'm good at. And mind
mhm.
you, when you were 15 and your pride led you to say, I'll be the man when I get 20 bitches under my belt. You, you didn't know that you were making a decision for 25
Exactly.
year old you.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. No, no, you didn't. And like you say, I think the way that we fix that is that we lift that up off of young people. We lift
Hmm.
that up, and another way that we lift that up young people is we stop telling them what they have to do, what they have to be, what they have to
Exactly.
become, and we start telling them that they are enough.
Hmm.
That they are enough. We stop asking the question, what do you want to be? What do you want to be, as if they aren't something already,
Hmm.
and if who they are right now is not enough,
Yeah,
they are uniquely them. There's no one else in
exactly.
existence like them. How cool is that?
I know,
When
like, be who you are, and the
right, right,
goals will create and
exactly.
accomplish
Yep, yep,
themselves.
yep,
That's how it
absolutely.
really works.
Yep, yep, yep.
Um,
And we have to, wherever we are in life, we have to commit to that.
yeah.
If we're going to change, how they say that, be the change you want to see in the world.
Mhm.
I mean, that is an absolute truth. um we have to at any given point be able to sacrifice who we are for who we might become.
Mhm.
And that means, doesn't matter how old we are or where we are, we can actually change our thinking, shift our thinking, so that we then begin to facilitate for ourselves, for our environment, and for our
Yeah.
young people the greatness that really is inside of us all. So
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just because we tell people the world is yours. It's full of opportunities and possibilities. But then, as they get older, get closer to 18, okay, so you're gonna get a job, you're gonna get a trade, you're gonna go to college, or you're gonna open a business. Four things.
Yeah, yeah,
Four things.
yeah. Or the worst, in my mind, the worst one of all, and we just a young person, two young people this past year joined the military.
Mm,
People are still seeing that as
as
an
an
option,
option. Yeah.
and especially now in today's times, joining the military. And I know that a lot of people think that they will never ever have to go to war. They'll never ever have to fight, but to
They don't
just, I
watch the
mean,
news. Mind you,
they
I don't
don't.
either, but I don't either.
They
But I know what's
don't.
going on enough to know that
It,
war may be a possibility now.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I
I
don't
don't
want
know,
to say
Olivia.
this because I don't want to speak it into existence. But I'm just saying, for a long time, this country has had the luxury of fighting their war on other people's land.
hmm
And I will also say that if you look around the world, things are changing.
hmm
That's all I'll say. But I will
Yeah.
be with my man, my man, my man in Cameroon.
Yeah. Tanzania, Guinea-Bissau, you know,
Mm.
I'm
Even
telling
though
you.
things aren't 100%, things aren't necessarily good over there if you speak to different people that live there.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
my whole thing is, when you are on the right side of history, karma does the
Mhm.
rest.
It does the rest. It does the rest. Um,
And that's what I believe.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so I will be on the continent.
Mhm.
Okay?
Mhm.
Me and
Mhm.
mine, to whoever want to go,
Mhm.
we will be
And
on the
and here's
continent.
see, and here's the thing. That is more and more of a reality, and more, and I'll call it, I'll use a word, it's a feasibility
Mm,
now more than ever before. I mean, I've known people over the years who talked about, repatriating and what that would mean and what you give up and whatever. But it is almost like that process is so elevated now, more in terms of reality. And again, it's knowing where to go. It's knowing,
mhm,
where you want to be. It's knowing what you want, but it's also knowing about the potential that's there, because even Africa, as a continent, and the different nations and people that are there, they're waking up. There's a new awareness in terms of how um, they want to interact with the rest of the world. Number one, who they are and their position, their power, and their resources. And also, there's a level of creativity that was not heretofore. What I mean is that,
mm,
as we know, Africa, they always thought about themselves in the world with respect to, and talk about pride, with respect to how other nations saw them and how they had to deal with and interact with other nations. We're now at the point where we can begin to create in speaking, the we now means Africa, we can begin to create our own future, outside of the matrix, or outside of
mhm,
the standard, or outside of the world economy. And that's becoming more and more of a reality. A reality now. I have this thing that I post all the time: people aren't stupid anymore. And they aren't. They are. I really do see a difference in terms of awareness and who's aware, because I even see white folks coming up with some woke stuff now in terms of understanding
mhm.
what's really happening in the world. This guy
Um,
was saying, he's saying we are all. He said all they did was transform slavery, and now we're all slaves
mhm.
financially. He's saying we're this white guy saying and even
That's what I was about to say. At
yeah.
the military, they rebranded slavery.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
and now it's and that's the thing. When you do an evil, over time, you can't contain it.
Mm-hmm.
You think you're going to contain it to just, everybody else except you and your people, but you
Mm-hmm.
can't contain it because you give it a life of its own, and it's going to affect you. And then, as you said, coming back to what you just said, then there's this thing called karma,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a universal law. And I know that there's some people in this world who don't believe in it or think they
Mm-hmm.
can escape it, but you can't escape it any more than you can escape gravity.
Yeah,
You know,
everyone. I it's a spiritual debt.
yeah.
There's a spiritual debt to be paid.
Hmm.
And uh I think the bank is being robbed as we speak.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I do think so. But we cannot hold this audience much longer.
I know.
Now,
I know.
and here I am thinking about all the curse words that we could discuss for next week's episode, just for me to get online and say, Mustafa, you're gonna be mad at me. I don't want to talk about this. And then, in the fatherly way that you needed to, I said, I don't want to talk about pride. I don't feel like it. And then you slid in and said pride and back to pride. And I'm like, you know what? Thanks,
Yeah,
Dad.
yeah,
Thank you. I talked about it. I
uh,
needed to confront it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah,
I think the best way to end off this episode is, as always, our invitation to journal.
yeah.
Um, and mind you, I do these journals too. When
Hmm.
we do an invitation to journal, we need what is a journal prompt that we could do coming off of this episode, Mustafa? We talked about a lot, so there's a lot of creativity.
Yeah, we did. We did. I think one thing to think about is who would you be without your pride?
Ooh.
Yeah, who would you be without all of those things that you are proud of? If you were to make a list of all of those things you were proud of,
Mm.
and then you look at that list and say, who would you be without any of those things?
Well, let me go
You
take
know.
off this wig. No, but okay. I'm
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
do that. I'm going
yeah,
to do that. But thank you
yeah.
all for joining us for our intergenerational conversation. We hope to see you next week
Yeah.
for episode 3 of Generational Curse Words.
Take care, all.